On August 19th, The Guardian newspaper ran an article entitled, "Protests by Thousands of Ecuadorians Met with Brutal Repression." The article by David Hill, while not categorized as an opinion piece, represents little more than a naked attack on the government of Rafael Correa. Making reference to a protest that took place in the Ecuadorian capital of Quito on August 13th, Hill writes that, quote, "Riot police were tear gassing and clubbing Ecuadorian citizens, and that the government's response to the protests were to, quote, send police and military with batons and tear gas to beat citizens, make arbitrary arrests, and raid homes." The article quotes opponents of the Correa government at length, describing scenes of what they deem to be total brutality. Well, Telesur English was on the streets that day, and what we saw was a little bit different. Here you can see members of the Ecuadorian opposition, the ones The Guardian has chosen to portray as victims, attacking police with firebombs, projectiles, and just about anything they could get their hands on. Of course, if you had only read the Guardian article, you wouldn't know that over 80 police officers had been injured as a result of the actions of protesters over the last week. Far from using the tactics that the article described as brutal repression, police showed extraordinary restraint in the face of the violence of the protesters. That's not to say they didn't react at all. But what would happen if protesters used those kinds of tactics in the United States? Yeah, Guantanamo Bay is still open for business. The article quotes zero government supporters and distorts the reality of what's happening in Ecuador. Let's take the case of foreign activist Manuela Pic. The article repeats unsubstantiated claims that Pic, who was participating in opposition demonstrations in which violence was employed, was beaten by police. Yet Pic herself admitted that she was treated cordially by police.
En los hospitales fui muy bien tratada cordialmente por los policías y los equipos de salud que estaban a cargo.
And let's be clear about who Manuela Pic is. She is the partner of opposition leader Carlos Perez, who is now openly calling for the police and the military to rebel against the government. In Ecuador, comments like these aren't taken lightly, as the nation was witness to a 2010 coup attempt against the government, which resulted in the deaths of 8 people. What the Guardian article fails to mention is that there are serious divisions in the indigenous movement in Ecuador. Many indigenous organizations recognize the gains that have been made in Ecuador during the Correa presidency. This includes cutting unemployment, raising the minimum wage, and creating one of the most stable economies in Latin America. Unfortunately, The Guardian has once again failed to provide its readers with accurate information about Latin America. Instead of reporting the facts, it is distorting the truth by buying into a romanticized narrative that all indigenous organizations, by their very nature, are beyond criticism. Such is not the case in Ecuador, nor in Latin America. It's time The Guardian got its story right and stopped bashing leftist governments in the region.